If they wanted socialism, they're getting everything that they wanted with it. Howdy, folks. I'm Alfonso Rich with my buddy Bill Whittle. And okay, so I caught wind of this this article here, and it seems pretty happy, man. It's like one of those things that brings out hope in folks. And the article reads, boom. This is on trending politics. Boom. Video shows that FJB season is back. All right. Can you dig it? And by the way, howdy, folks. This is a virtue signal, in case you didn't know. All right. But now, and it starts off by reading, Bill, college football season is back. And so is FJB. FJB season is finally back at long last, too, with conservative college kids around the country sounding off on the Biden regime that has done so much to eviscerate. Okay, so I didn't know that we had like college, that the college campuses were so populated where they could fill up football stadiums and have them all shouting FJB. Man, if we have all these conservatives that are going to college, what the crap are they doing with their degrees and coming out and messing with the country? And but I mean, I got a lot to say about this, Bill, but just starting with that headline, because, you know, I kind of just pulled this stuff out of my hat and just start talking about it. And I want to see what you think about it. But that's where we are. Are these the kind of things that we find hope in? I don't know, man. It's like, for me, I don't know if I find hope in, a bunch of college students shouting FJB. But I mean, what's it do for you, man?
Well, first of all, it took me 35 seconds to figure out what FJB meant in this context. As a football, junior this fantasy football. No, the FJB is just another expression for "Let's go, Brandon." Yeah, I actually do find that kind of encouraging. I don't remember anybody doing that during the Trump administration, and they didn't have to, because CNN did that for them every day, right? And so did all of their TV shows and all of their award shows and all of their musicians and all of their cult, idols and all of their influencers and all the rest. They were shouting, DT every single day. This kind of thing is pushback, and the thing that surprises me about the amount of left-wing rot that's on the college campuses today is that this is the age when you're supposed to be rebelling against authority. And I've never seen college students line up behind authority the way that these social justice warriors do. You know, here comes the memo on what we're supposed to be angry about today, and they go out and execute orders. I suspect that's because that when you start early enough, you can create an army of little killbots, and they'll stay yours for the rest of their life. But you got to start early enough. In other words, if you treat a child as a child and let them go out and play and come back before dark, that kind of thing, then they're going to be, on some level, they're going to develop some sense of independence, some sense of self-worth. If you let them lose baseball games or break an ankle or skin a knee or let them ride their bike or whatever, then the whole purpose of childhood is to learn how to make decisions by making bad decisions on a small scale. So by the time a normal kid gets to college, he or she's going to be inclined to rebel against whatever the current thing is, right? This is a psychological time in every human's life where they are wired by hormones and psychology. It's essentially just really a biological function. There comes a point where very quickly you go from being utterly dependent on your parents to a burning desire to be seen as far away from your parents as possible. That's what gets little pups and cubs out into the wild, right? So they don't follow their parents around until they die. That's the whole dynamic. And so we send kids to college to get their the highest level of education when they are at the time in their lives when they are the least likely to be able to absorb it. because they're so filled with this sense of rebellion and now that I can do my own laundry and I don't live at home, I finally realize what a fascist my dad is, and all this stuff. But this generation, especially Gen Z and millennials to some degree, don't seem to be exhibiting on a large scale that kind of rebellion. And I think it's because the left had gotten to them so early that they were helicopter parented, right? They had to depend on their parents for everything. I got my driver's license on the when the Department of Motor Vehicles opened on the morning of my 16th birthday. I was like the first guy there. So they don't take care. They don't drive. They're not very independent. They've never had to lose. Everybody wins a participation trophy. They've been dependent and they've been programmed, and they're used to being programmed. They've never spent time really outside of the system. And now with the electronic age, they've never spent any time disconnected. Most of the huge part of my personality, and yours as well, I'm sure, was time that I would spend with my friends, just talking to my friends. I wasn't talking to my friends in front of my parents, and I wasn't talking to my friends in front of other people. We're just talking about things. And I suspect that's why they tend to be such generally speaking, a much more servile generation than any generation that's come before them. I mean, except for whatever generations of slaves you might have had back in Egypt or whatever the case may be. So I guess that's it. And to me, this is a sign of, it's not so much a sign that they're Republicans. It's a sign that they're actual human teenagers. And they know that they're not allowed to say this anywhere else. And there is a certain anonymity in a football stadium because largely the kind of people who are going to crucify you for having an opinion contrary to the Democratic line don't go to football games because they're all a bunch of communists and weenies.
Okay, so now this is, I guess, my struggle with this. Shouting, just like you said, it doesn't mean that they're Republicans now. But see, the thing is, in this article, and this isn't the only one. This is kind of the general perspective that they tend to have with conservative college kids shouting FJB. Okay, I thought conservatives are supposed to be the party of standards and values and morality, but particularly standards. And I'm like, so if you go to a football game and you start shouting FJB, that's the standard that makes you a conservative? It's like, that don't sound like a lot of standards at all, really. And are they given over to some sort of emotional release? I thought we were conservatives that weren't driven by our emotions. I thought we looked at things very subjectively and went by that. This FJB, and I've said this for a long time. I've been saying it ever since Obama was president, because, you have a lot of conservative outlets. They say, oh, they're resisting Obama and they're starting to see. And I'm like, no, they're not starting to see anything. They're not discouraged at all by the socialist worldview. The reason why they're saying FJB is because of Joe Biden, not because of socialism, not because of the collectivist worldview. They're just disappointed because under him, it's hurting so bad to drag us there. They don't understand that even the process to go search socialist is going to hurt. But he's just doing it wrong. He's not effective at doing it. So FJB, we want somebody else to drag us towards socialism. That's all this is. That's all it is. That's all it always is. So, when I'm seeing stuff like this and I'm seeing like conservative outlets go ahead and calling them conservatives now, I'm like, wow, man, I think we're betraying ourselves.
Well, I have to disagree with you on this one. I think that this you mentioned, is it a release of emotion? It's absolutely that. I have basically, I'm sure I've muttered those initials a few times myself in the last couple of years and more on a daily basis. So first things first, right? I mean, just because you're a conservative doesn't mean you're a Vulcan, I mean, you're allowed to have emotions and get and feel about things. And as far as the language goes, the vulgarity of the language, that ship sailed in the 60s. In the 60s and 70s, culturally it had sailed. All you had to do is all you have to do now is look at a George Carlin or Richard Pryor set from 1980, 82, and you realize that the influencers, when they were really influencers, not just somebody on TikTok who has 10,000 fans. So the language ship has sailed. So that doesn't particularly bother me. I think I don't think that they're complaining that Joe Biden isn't socialist enough. I think that's what the SJWs do. I think the guts of what they're saying is, I think they're tired of the whole thing, right? They're tired of being called racist. They're tired of being called transphobes. They're tired of being called all of these things because they think the new She-Hulk TV show sucks, or they're tired of this control that is coming down on them. So I really think that it is in fact a genuine rebellion against. See, here's the thing about this I call it tie-dye tyranny. These people don't have guns. If they had guns in camps, I'd at least respect them. They do all of this through manipulation and guilt and social standards and peer pressure and all the rest of it. And so I think this is just a rebellion against all of that. And the fact that I cannot recall. There's only one sport I follow, and it's college football, and I haven't followed it too much lately. Gators haven't been doing so well. But not that I'm a fair weather Gator, mind you. But I cannot recall a time where politics routinely entered football games the way that this phenomena has, except for when you go back 4 or 5 years and you get the whole Colin Kaepernick thing. And so I think maybe the real answer to your question is, I don't think these kids injected politics into football. I think the left injected politics into football. I think the left injects politics into everything. And that's the plan. That's the best way to constantly divide people, right? You can't even be football fans anymore without being at war with each other. Yeah. So I think that they're using that opportunity, not even consciously. I just think, like I said, there's something about a football game as a kind of anonymity, and there is a kind of look, people like watch football are they're manly men and womanly women. They're not. You don't see a lot of purple hairs in the football stadium, right? Because it's a violent, aggressive example of toxic masculinity. So the people who you find in a football stadium on a college campus are the ones who are normal, right? They go for the excitement of the game, and they go for pride in their school and all the rest of it. So basically a football game is a chance for all the normal kids on campus to get together in one spot. And once you do that, you find yourself surrounded by people who may or may not consider themselves Republicans, but they certainly don't like this wave of repression that's coming down on them. And I actually, the more I think about it, the more convinced I am that there's something really to this, that at a football game, you really have selected out the normal people, not the conservatives, just the normal people. And you've noticeably freed yourself from all of the weirdos and freaks that are telling you what you're supposed to believe and what a horrible person you are if you don't. So I think these things just kind of spontaneously erupt out of a sense of, 3 hours of freedom when we're in the stadium, and we get to, we don't have to worry about the person sitting next to me if we're going to be, screaming orange and blue back and forth across Florida Field. And I suspect that's probably the cause of it. I certainly don't think they're saying, geez, we're not getting enough socialism. Biden's failing us on that score.
Well, it's a gathering to be entertained. It's pretty much the same way that, you would, the dynamics are definitely different, but, you go to a movie or something like that, you go to a concert, whether it's a movie or concert or football game, there's a center of entertainment that's what they're there for, despite whatever, opposing views that we would all have. And you're going to have people go to concerts and movie theaters and things like that who are going to have different views. But the focus is supposed to be what's either happening on the field or on the screen. And I can totally see where that would be a moment to escape from all these other, ideas that we clash with. But, just like you said, politics was interjected in it, and they took upon a reason to start shouting FJB. And the thing is, they're probably upset, not just because of the wokeism and the genderism and stuff like this. Like, look, man, you've made it more expensive for us to buy our beer and weed. We're not having as much fun with the college experience as we were supposed to be having. But the thing is, socialism, the way socialism works is by dividing people. If you're going to have socialism be effective, hey, take Hitler. They like to bring up Hitler all the time. Well, he had to make sure that there was some sort of national bad guy, to make that work. So they're getting, if they wanted socialism, they're getting everything that they wanted with it. That's what all of this stuff takes in order for it to make it happen. In their sense of rebellion, they're late. The only reason why they would need to feel like they have to rebel is because the powers have already rebelled against them, from the faculty to the elected official. They're the ones holding the power, rebelling against us as it is. Anybody trying to rebel now is late, right? And that's one of the reasons why we have, these resistance, because we already have people who took power to rebel against us in the first place. And responding, with profanity. And like I said, man, I get it. People have it. I'm not trying to say that we're supposed to be Vulcans or anything like that. I'm talking about control, not elimination, but control of our emotions. And, when profanity became more of a thing, like in media, it's not like we became a better country for it. It's like we make excuses for it, but it's like they're called curse words for a reason. And more our culture is becoming more profane. And it can't be one of those things where, well, I'm cussing out of, patriotic duty or something like that, or there's some redeeming value to my cursing and whatnot. It's like, for me, I don't curse, in my, and don't get me wrong, y'all, because off camera, I could be a bit of a potty mouth, but I don't profit from profanity. I don't do that. I don't curse on camera because I know that it leads to problems. So I got to bite a hole in my lip a lot of times because, sometimes I do want to go off cursing. Yes, I do. And yes, FJB has probably slipped my lips at one time, but if this is how I make my living, this is how I make my money, I don't want it to be something where profanity is something I get rewarded for, because a lot of culture sees that anyway, and thinking that's why the country is becoming more and more profane, and it ain't going to a good place.
On the larger point, you're right about the just general decline in standards, and I'm willing to grant that, but, in this particular case, I don't find, look, so the world has changed a lot. So I graduated in 80. Well, I didn't graduate. I finished college. I didn't graduate in 82. And I got there in 79. And at the University of Florida, there was, in fact, a class enemy, and it was the Florida State Seminoles. And the Seminoles have this cheer, and it's da 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 da. With the drums, da 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 da. And every time that they would play this, every Gator in the crowd, at the top of his lungs, everybody who I respected anyway, started, F the Seminoles. F the Seminoles, but we didn't say F. That's just the nature of the kind of euphoric excitement that you get from, especially a live football game. That's what you do when you've got 19, 20, 21-year-old hormones in your body, and you're full of life. I don't even have the energy to stand up anymore if that were to happen. You kids just go ahead. But so I don't really have a problem with that. And not only did I not see this FJB thing prior to Biden, I also noticed that you don't hear that at women's soccer matches. Right. So I come back to my argument about this being a self-selected crowd of normal people. Football is the definitive example, really, of in our culture. It's the only real world example we have about your position on masculinity. I mean, really, if you think about it, that is well, at the very least on a college campus, that is what is the dividing line. We never heard of things like toxic masculinity because we don't believe that there's such a thing. We know there are bad guys out there, but that's something different. And so now on college campuses, and I'm not talking about places like Oberlin and so on. I'm talking about what used to be real universities, and they're continuing to drift to the left. But in that stadium, the people that go to a football game or watch a football game go to be carried away by emotion, and real physical emotion, unlike in a movie theater where you might be frightened or whatever. I've never been in a movie theater where the good guy wins and everybody just jumped to their feet and started roaring at the top of their lungs, high-fiving each other and pouring beer over each other's heads, So you've got this kind of exuberance of a crowd that is selected for normalcy. And I think that's why this and NASCAR, right? Those are the two places you see these things. You don't see it at tennis matches, but you do see it in football games, mostly college football games, almost exclusively college football games, and NASCAR. And I think the reason you don't see it so much in pro games is because by that time people have grown up a bit. Look, I think this whole thing is essentially a form of, when you've got the pregame or the postgame show and you got the four guys on the platform there behind the table and everybody in the background's going, like this, right? It's essentially that thing. It's kind of like, look at me, I'm on TV. But I personally do find it encouraging. I like the fact that they're responding to this in the only venue that they have to publicly express their emotions among other people without, being sent to the re-education camp.
Man, and that is kind of where we've been sending kids, whether it's grade school or whether it's college. That's what they've turned into, is the re-education camps. And careful where we're spending our money, folks, and who's taking our money to do what. And speaking of masculinity, man, with the politics, does that masculinity come and find itself feeling conflicted when when you got the male cheerleaders out there, or maybe like a more of a boost in transgender cheerleaders? I better stop, man, because we're gonna get fired from the internet.
That transgender cheerleader attempt has not caught fire.
That's good.
It has not caught fire.
Now, that's encouraging.
Because of the reasons I selected, the reasons I said. And, I used to have that same feeling about men cheerleaders, and then I realized how much time they got to spend with the women cheerleaders, and I realized, no, these guys are actually much smarter than I am.
I always hoped that was the motivation. I haven't seen that. That's what we would think, but I remember being in high school and male cheerleaders were coming in then, and they weren't in there for the girls. But who am I to say? At any rate, y'all, thank you guys so much for tuning into the Virtue Signal. I'm Alfonso Rachel. This is Bill Whittle. Make sure you boogie on over to BillWhittle.com and become a member. Make a donation, share these videos. Work that share button until it smokes, because we're trying to do our job to promote some sanity out there, man. And we need gas and delivery truck to do it. All right, y'all. Good night.